Hello, this is the first of three videos about the life and work of Alfred Adler, the Austrian psychotherapist and founder of his own distinctive school of depth psychology and therapy, which came to be known as individual psychology. Today I want to talk briefly about his life, and in the following two videos about his concept of the inferiority complex and the break with Freud, and a number of key concepts and insights. Adler was born in 1870 in one of the suburbs of Vienna, at that time still in open country. His father was a Jewish grain merchant, originally from Hungary, and Alfred was the second child of 7 children. The family lived comfortably. Alfred's childhood was marred by ill health, however. Early in life he developed rickets, the deficiency disease then still common in Europe, which leads to insufficient calcium for children's bone development. In Adler's case, it meant that he was fairly immobile during his early childhood, deeply regretting that he could not run and jump like his older brother. Then he developed pneumonia and almost died, in retrospect a key event in his own understanding of his life, as, according to his own later account, at the age of 5, hearing the doctor tell his father that his son was near death, he determined himself to become a doctor. Thereafter his physical health improved, yet although described as an active, friendly, and outgoing child, he later referred to his continuing sense of inferiority to his older brother, whose model accomplishments he could never hope to rival. Although his parents were loving, and had been deeply concerned for his safety during his illness, he felt that his brother was his mother's favorite child, and that he himself was undersized and unattractive. This self-perception is relevant to his later development of the concept of the inferiority complex, of course. Enjoying music, and with a wide range of intellectual interests, Adler kept to his childhood dream and trained to be a doctor, gaining a medical degree from the University of Vienna in 1895, and specializing as an ophthalmologist, and later studying neurology and psychiatry as well. He became a general practitioner in one of Vienna's poorer neighborhoods. During his years at university, he was close to a group of socialist students, one of whom, a Russian-Jewish social activist from a wealthy family, Bireysel Psikoloji, later became his wife. The couple married in 1897 and had 4 children, 2 of whom became psychiatrists. One of their granddaughters is Margot Adler, the American author and journalist. Raisa was an emancipated woman and an outspoken radical, committed both to the betterment of Russia and the socialist cause. She was a close friend of Leon Trotsky, for example. She was not the quiet, domesticated housefrau that Viennese doctors' wives were generally expected to be, and as one of Adler's biographers observed, it is easier to believe in equal rights for women than to live with a woman who practices them. For his part, Adler was far less political than his wife, but retained his leftist sympathies and his commitment to social betterment, a concern evident in his developing interest in psychology. He was an extremely sociable man, informal, charming and friendly, and attracting people from all levels of society. Loving Viennese cafe culture, with its joking, wine, food, and animated conversation, and often choosing to meet his friends and students there, rather than more formal settings. With his developing psychological interests, Adler was greatly impressed by Freud's early work, including his 1900 book on the interpretation of dreams, and in 1902 was invited to join the small group of men that formed with Freud the Wednesday Society, that was the forerunner of the Viennese Psychoanalytic Society. Adler became one of the leading figures in the emerging psychoanalytic movement and was chosen by Freud to be his successor as president of the Viennese Psychoanalytic Society in 1910, as well as co-editor of the newly established Central Journal of Psychoanalysis. By this time, however, Adler and Freud were drifting apart, 2 strong personalities with what were increasingly obvious different understandings of key ideas in psychoanalysis. Freud sought to censor the expression of Adler's views in the movement's journal, and after several meetings of the Society in 1911, Freud and his supporters declared that Adler's approach was incompatible with proper psychoanalysis as defined by Freud. Adler and his followers thereupon left the Viennese Psychoanalytic Society and established their own group, which they initially called the Society for Free Psychoanalytic Research, but was shortly thereafter renamed by Adler as the Society for Individual Psychology. 2 years later, World War I broke out, and Adler, unlike Freud, who was almost 60 at the time and 14 years his senior, was inducted into the Austrian army, serving as a physician in several war zones. After the war, he received private backing to establish child guidance clinics within the Viennese school system. These were very successful, Adler gaining a reputation as a leading figure in child and educational psychology. He also attracted increasing international attention, and during the 1920s began to give lecture tours to promote the ideas of individual psychology. He received a particularly warm welcome in the United States, which he visited for the first time in 1926, meeting American teachers who had previously attended his lectures in Europe. In 1927, he was appointed as a lecturer at Columbia University, and in 1932 as professor of medical psychology at Long Island College of Medicine. By this time, he was spending around half of each year in the United States. Meanwhile, political divisions in Austria, including action against leftists such as Adler's wife, as well as the rise of Nazism and increasing anti-Semitism, were making Austria an increasingly unpleasant place to be, and despite his own conversion to Christianity, Adler judged that emigration to the United States would be preferable, establishing his home there in 1934. Adler continued his energetic international lecture tours, sometimes visiting 2 towns in one day, and despite being in his 60s, obviously pushing himself very hard. The end came in May 1937 during a visit to Aberdeen in Scotland, when he collapsed in the street with what proved to be a fatal heart attack. He was 67 years old. Thank you for listening. I'll continue the account of his ideas in the following 2 videos.